Correctly with the correct amount.
D20 Radio, where gamers roll.
www.d20radio.com.
This is Caitlin, aka Howie, and welcome to the Unseen Worlds Season 1 Q&A. I'm here with everyone and more. Just to introduce everybody, I play Eliana. Let's just do our initiative order list, I guess.
Excellent! That means, hi, I'm Baaron. I play Caden for this campaign.
Howdy, I'm Jonathan. I'm your friend of the neighborhood game master, and I also play Joan. And as game master, I play everyone else as well.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Zander. I play Voltaire.
Hello, I'm Nathaniel, and I play Rian.
And we are also joined by a new friend who's going to be playing our newest PC in Season 2 of the Unseen World.
Hi, I'm Aimee. I am playing an undetermined character, and I will be the mediator for this little Q&A. Since I was not a participant in Season 1, I get to ask all the questions, get all the answers.
Yeah, she was elsewhere during that time.
So
I was in Africa.
Yes, you were.
Definitely busy.
Story for another day.
Another day.
So Aimee has all the questions, and she's going to ask us the questions that you guys sent in, and I have been told that she has some of her own as well.
Yeah, just in case we need them.
Cool, yo.
Okay.
But take it away. Just a real quick note before we begin. No part of this Q&A will be spoiler-free as regards Season 1 of the Unseen World. So if that's something that you care about, I would advise that you stop now, go back, listen to Season 1, and then listen to this afterwards.
All right, so these next few questions, or these first few questions, I suppose it would be, are going to be from Craftador on our Discord, which feel free to join. It's a fun place to be. All right, so the first one is for Aaron and his character Caden. It says, If I understand correctly, Caden is unable to use one of his senses at all times, though he may change which sense at will, and the others are heightened as a result. Why do you choose to be blind the vast majority of the time rather than unable to smell or one of the other senses?
Okay. So I guess maybe we didn't, or Caden, being the vague person that he is, didn't fully elaborate exactly how his powers really work. But it's not so much that he limits him one sense and that heightens the rest. The way it actually works is all of his senses are heightened all of the time. However, his brain was not originally designed to process that much information. So if he didn't limit one of his senses, he'd basically be living in sensory overload constantly. And you might see that be introduced here and there when he suffers strain because of something, especially if he, like, a loud noise comes in, like occasionally. Jonathan will be like, all right, this is certainly an intense moment in terms of smell or hearing, take some strain because of that. So you'll see that some more probably. In terms of why he chooses to be blind as opposed to all the other senses, it's more about practicality. It's about how he chooses to navigate the world. Since he has to limit one of the senses, he had to pick one that made sense and that's easy to, deal with. It's not like you can just eliminate taste very easily. I mean,
yeah, and if you could eliminate taste, like that wouldn't really help the sensory overload a whole bunch.
Not really. And then same thing for touch. since that happens more often when you're like actually like focused on something. So this would mainly have to be, does he limit his hearing, his sight, or his smell? And his smell helps him really navigate a lot of things much easier. There's a lot of information he can get from that, same from hearing and from sight. And so he chooses blindness mainly because he thinks he can gain the most amount of information just from what he can smell and from what he can hear. And he's trained himself in that way. If he limits just his hearing, he can definitely see a lot more and probably could even see farther than most. But then that limits his kind of situational awareness, his ability to kind of be in the moment. Such as like typically, since, you know, he might be able to hear someone coming up behind him versus if he's, you know, blinded, he might not see someone coming forward, but he might hear them coming forward. So it's just easier to navigate in that way. But occasionally he'll have to switch to being able to see in order to accomplish certain things, which happened in first season, actually. So
I think
that's why he chooses blindness. Yeah.
I think it's also really fun narratively because it just sort of gives a whole different dimension to things, like adding in the sense of smell for people and situations and stuff is just like gives a whole, it just gives like a layer of richness to everything that wouldn't be there otherwise. And I love it when Caden's like in situations by himself, because then, I don't know, the descriptions get really, really interesting because he's not seeing anything.
This is really, it really tests Jonathan a lot as well, because like, so what is he smelling? And he's like, because we're just describing what everyone's seeing because we're trying to all have a mental image of what's happening. But since Cayden isn't really seeing, we have to describe the scenario or like the environment in a different way. And I think it's been challenging for Jonathan at the start, but he's gotten real good at it as well. It's been real good.
It's a fun challenge to deal with, to figure out the different ways that Cayden is perceiving things differently than everyone else. Or especially like Caitlin mentioned when it's just Cayden in the scene, where I have to just completely describe the scene in a different sense without any visual imagery. And I'm a visual thinker, and so that's really interesting to try to describe things only using smells and sounds and whatnot.
Yeah. It helps me stay in character because I have to think about how Cayden approaches it with the only information that he has, you know, like exactly like here's the information he has. What's the decision that he would make with that? And since I'm a very, well, it helps me stay more in character as well. So it's fun in a lot of ways. We'll say.
I have a kind of a follow-up question, not a planned one, just kind of since we were talking about this. So I don't remember in the season, was Cayden ever confronted with a smell or a sound or something that he just couldn't recognize? Or has he like trained his senses so he knows what most things smell like to be able to distinguish them? Does he just like know what it smells like? Because we all might know what some things smell like, but yeah, in this season.
I don't think there was ever a time in this season where you just flat out didn't know what something smelled like.
There have been times when like maybe he didn't get as much information as he wanted, or the information itself wasn't very useful. Yeah. Like in the road trip when trying to figure out how to deal with that cop, all he got was that the cop had like bathed in a couple of days. Like, let's call him out. Let's call him out on that.
That was the same part when you had to use your eyes instead, because you couldn't survey the crime scene when no crime was happening without using your eyes.
But before that, he was blinded because like it was when they got into the scene that he was that he switched to be able to see it. That's a good example. Yeah, it's like, to get more information. Yeah. There
are definitely moments where he doesn't know how to interpret the information he is, like with Marid in High Roller. It's like, well, I have these smells.
Yeah,
I don't
know. He smells like, what was it? He smells like
what to do with them.
And then wood smoke. What am I supposed to do with that? Wood smoke seems important, but why?
Camera talked about that so much.
It's just all I had. I'm like, why is that important? Why is
Google deep dives? But like we don't like encounter many like 100% totally unfamiliar beings or anything in season 1.
So. I guess I was just asking because like in my daily life I might smell something, I'm like, that's familiar, but I don't know what it is.
What the heck is it?
Anyway, this next question is for Caitlin. It says, Jonathan tends to throw a fair number of combats at you guys. Eliana has a wound threshold of 10, as I recall. Have you ever felt more like a burden than a help in a combat scene because of Eliana's vulnerability?
I like Amy's smiling. This is a really good question, and I like it a lot. The answer is I have felt like more of a burden than a help in fights, but I don't often feel that way. Because, like, I mean, you have in like All Right, I'll Bite, the first arc, like, you know, she gets taken hostage, and that's not great. So that was one of those situations. But, like, in general, she's just not, like, she's not doing enough damage or enough interesting damage to get the attention of anyone we're fighting, really. Like, we've got, like, you're a bad guy, and you're confronted with a hitman from hell, a werewolf monster hunter, a freaking wizard, Joan LaFay, and then, like, another monster hunter that can deal 19 damage in one go. And, like, you're not gonna see, like, the anxious toothpick with a gun that doesn't really use off in the back corner as a threat, really. Like, she's not... she's smart enough to not put herself into situations from which she needs to be saved. So, like, so generally, I don't feel like, I do always worry that someone will go for the weakest link. But that doesn't typically happen because you've got all these terrifying other people to deal with. So I have, but not often.
Nice.
Yeah, the only time monsters really go after Eliana specifically is if she gets a lucky shot, or if they want to use her as a bargaining chip, like the Bavanshi did
at the very beginning.
Oh, it just depends on how cruel Jonathan feels that day.
That's a good point.
Because, like, the monsters are probably gonna go after the gun boys or the wizard girl.
Yeah.
Like,
the only time where Eliana's been in some serious danger up to this point has been in a fight, has been in that final fight in the finale episode, because she walks out and she goes first and she goes twice and she hits real hard immediately, and so she gets attacked, but normally she doesn't usually roll that high, or if she does, she, like, backs out of the fight because she knows that she's a twig, and so yeah, it just doesn't, it's not normally an issue.
Next question, for everyone, what are each of your archetypes / species, and why did you choose them? That's a fun question.
This is a fun one. We want to go in the initiative order again?
Yes, Aaron.
Man, this initiative order thing is a work of genius. This is a great idea. So funny thing about being a werewolf, essentially, well, a shifter, is that isn't an archetype. That's a talent that you can acquire. It's a thing that you can, like, attach to your character as like, to, like, change it, essentially. And so, like, it wasn't that I'm like, oh, I'm choosing the werewolf archetype. No, this one, he's actually a normal human. You, picked normal human, normal boy with twos across the board.
Common mortal.
That's what it is. Common mortal. That's what it is. So he's a common mortal just with the shifter talent. And so his ability, of course, is ready for anything, which Nathaniel shares, which is nice because that means we have two people with that, which is nice. But why did I... Making Caden was a very long, arduous process. It was the hardest character for me to make and also just play. But in the process, I wanted at the start to just make a bounty hunter, and then that evolved in a lot of fun ways. But when I sat down to, like, make the character sheet and do all the stats, the only thing that made the most sense for where he started was common mortal. And I think, did we have Monster Hunter as an archetype? No,
that was not an archetype yet. I hadn't added
that. Was not an archetype at the time.
So the Fearless Slayer archetype was added in the expanded player's guide, which had not come out yet when we were making our characters for the season 1.
Yeah. Otherwise, it likely would have been that rather than Common Mortal, but among all the decisions, it made the most sense for it to be Common Mortal. And that's mainly just because there's a lot of variety. You can do a lot with just Common Mortal. It's not just like, there's a lot that you can do with it. There's a lot of potential there. So that's why I chose that for Caden.
I chose, Eliana is a she changeling. That's the archetype. Yes? I know how this game works and what things are called. Okay, cool. Which I believe is under like the socialite category in the
Charmer is the
Charmer.
I have so for reference,
sell your book real quick.
For reference, everyone. So when designing this campaign, I also created a source book for it. And so if you look on like Drive-Thru-RPG and look up the Unseen World, you will find this source book. Which
I'll link it in the description as well.
Awesome. Which basically gives the outline of this world and gives you basically everything you need to build your own campaigns in the Unseen World. But one of the ways that I broke things down in terms of archetypes is there's like your human archetypes, and then because there are so many different types of supernatural beings you can be, I split them up with their basic framework and then specifics. So for example, there's Charmer there and Brute. I'll give us 2 examples. Brute are just you've got some amount of like super strong magical blood. So you're like half ogre or half troll or half demon. And so they all have the basic of like 3 brawn. I think it was 1 presence. Don't remember off the top of my head. But basically, the like different types act as subspecies would be a way to think about it. And so the Charmer archetype has the sub-archetypes of Succubi Scion, Nephilim, and She Changeling.
Which I am the last of those ones. I chose it because for a number of reasons, but like the biggest ones were because first, because I wanted to, every time we do a campaign, I want to do something radically different from what I've done before. And, I always end up making the same character, basically, motivationally, because I'm drawn to the same themes. But in terms of, like, structure, like, I'd never played a social character. And so I wanted to do that. And the other reason is because I am always going to be drawn to anything, any sliding scale where over the course of the campaign you can lose your humanity or become more corrupt. Over, like, we did, like, my first RPG was Star Wars, and I was like, let's play with the morality of, like, the light side versus the dark side. And then we did, like, a World of Warcraft thing that Jonathan made a book for, and I was like, I'm gonna make somebody who will slowly be corrupted by forbidden magic. And then I'm just very drawn to the agency system. I think it's super interesting. So I just love playing with those ideas. So that's why I chose to be a she charmer, she changeling. I also always go human. And I was like, okay, we're gonna not be human this time.
All right. I also went she changeling for Joan, but sort of a different type of changeling. So while Eliana is half she, Joan was born fully human, but she was raised by everyone's favorite fairy lady, Morgan Le Fay.
We love her.
I don't think you can have a favorite fairy lady. I think you just have ones that you like more or less. Except for maybe Darcy.
That's fair.
Darcy can be a favorite, but that's it.
And so with Joan, I specifically wanted, when I was doing this, I wanted to have a character who had an evil fairy godmother, was the overall idea. And so I was like, all right, gonna do changeling. And then, like, when I was developing the thing, it was it leaned even more heavily to the whole like actually being made more Fae-like, because I had a lot of Mother Gothel ended up in Joan's playlist, and so that she kind of had.
We like making music playlists for our characters.
We do love that.
And yeah, and so kind of got a bit of a Mother Gothel Rapunzel-esque relationship there. But yeah, so that's why I picked the she-changeling charmer archetype for Joan.
Okay, I just want to cut in really fast because I really enjoyed just personally when Joan was blinded by the thorns, because it reminded me of Rapunzel when the prince falls into the thorn bush and he's blinded. Because when I was listening to that, I was like, it's kind of like the reverse. She saved herself and she was blinded.
And that's
I love that.
Because that was the roll of the dice, and I think it's great when we have accidental parallels. Like,
heck yes.
There's a lot about that moment that
where
was
things
great.
just kind of slot into place.
That's excellent. I love that.
That is great. I never even thought about that. That's a great, cool insight there, Aimee.
Aimee is our like fairy tale
expert.
Yeah.
I do know a lot about fairy tale.
Jonathan's our mythology expert. Amy's our fairy tale expert.
I really enjoyed also, I think my two favorite NPCs are Coyote and then Redcap, because when I saw Redcap, when I was like Red Hat, I was like, wait a minute.
I know what this is.
I know what Jonathan's doing.
I love that.
Oh, it's just fun to be a listener.
I'm glad you enjoy it.
I love that those two are your favorites, because those are two of my favorite NPCs to play as.
I feel like I like your more dramatic ones.
The Red Cat, where you make a choice and then just lean in. I love the Red Cap is one of my favorites. He's great. Deliciously upsetting. Is my favorite brand of Jonathan NPC.
Oh man.
Xander, you're up.
I think Annoy Voltaire is my favorite.
Yours and Jones.
I think everything annoys Voltaire, to be truly honest.
It's true.
I mean,
Voltaire, the fantasy racist.
There are a few things that don't. Voltaire is a Nephilim out of the Charmer archetype, which that was an interesting choice. I mean,
yes, continue.
I agree.
Yes.
I mean, when I was talking with Jonathan about it, we came up with the idea of a Nephilim, a child of an angel, working essentially for the Devil's Mafia. And then somewhere in between then and when Voltaire got created, I ended up watching some of Lucifer, the TV show, and Hugh Jackman's Van Helsing. And I was
you missed one, though. You need to watch Devil's a Part-Timer.
Okay.
But yeah, those two became...
those two. I did my best to just mush them together.
So beautiful.
And that was all of the inspiration that I had for Voltaire as a character. And it was beautiful. It was great.
Very entertaining at the very least.
I'm tempted to watch Lucifer simply because it's just more Voltaire vibes.
That's actually I watched the first season because I knew Xander was playing Voltaire, a character somewhat based on that, and I was like, well, I like the character, so let's watch the TV show, which is dark.
Yeah, I imagine it would be. It's called Lucifer.
Lucifer.
I don't know. I thought it was going to be a lighthearted comedy.
The clips on YouTube make it look like a lighthearted comedy.
It does. That was a buddy cop comedy. With some twists. I was wrong. I was expecting Psych, and I got, I don't know. I don't watch dark TV.
Okay, awesome.
Anyway.
Nathaniel Manuel.
So I chose human, common mortal. Reasons why? Couple of reasons actually. So reason one is because I had a very high suspicion / kind of knew that everyone else would choose something out of the ordinary and exotic. And
exotic.
Because I like creating characters that are normal.
Which I love. I love, like, Nathaniel goes in and he's like, I'm gonna be a man on the ground, living a regular life, and it's just fun to see the worlds through that lens.
It is.
Yeah, it's like everyone else creates all these exotic characters. Me, I have a plain boy here.
I have a plain boy.
I'm a man with a truck.
There is nothing special about this man. He is just there.
So I was surprised with all the choices everyone had that 3 people picked. For like, if you strip everything away, the base is human. So I guess Sid changed. Well, she changeling and then
must be human is the thing though.
There are no options in the unseen world where there's no human element.
Like vampire, ghost, half something else, and like a lot of humans. I enjoyed it.
You have 2 straight up humans, one person that was used to be straight up human,
but isn't anymore.
But is not anymore.
I would say that's 2 of them. 2 of them used to be straight up humans and aren't super anymore.
All right, fair enough. Yeah. There are certainly characters that feel more supernatural than other characters too.
Rian is by far the most human character in this group.
I would agree.
Agreed.
I think it's funny how all of those that chose non-human options all chose the same archetype.
I was thinking the same thing.
Like we all chose Charmer.
You all chose Charmer?
Yeah,
that's true because Joan, Eliana, and Zander Voltaire are all Charmers.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm the black sheep of the bunch, people.
They are the same. Zander and Voltaire. Anyway,
we gotta have variety.
You both play the saxophone. For anyone who doesn't know, I'm pretty sure it's Zander who's playing the saxophone on the intro every single week.
He is.
Yes.
Yep. He is playing the intro and the piano and the everything, which, I mean,
Zander, you're playing the piano.
In case no one knew.
Okay.
And you wrote the music too, right?
Yes. That is original music by yours truly.
All right, so the next one says, master spoilers do not reveal unless you've listened to the finale. I hope you're not listening unless...
I meant to say this at the beginning. I guess, it's too late at this point, I guess, but all the spoilers. Hey, don't listen to this unless you want every spoiler.
Every spoiler.
It's true.
There is no spoiler-free zone in this Q&A.
Yeah, this is at Jonathan and Zander. How far in advance did you 2 plan for Voltaire's betrayal?
I've been this is by far the question we've all had the most difficulty not talking about in the past couple weeks since you asked it, Crafty Door.
Fun question.
I love this question.
Because, Zander, do you want to say it or do you want me to say it?
We didn't plan it at all.
We did not. It was not a plan. It was not like... So... When we got this, I just laughed because at no point did we come together and say, hey, Voltaire's going to betray the party. But when the moment came, everyone knew that was everyone knew that was what Voltaire would do. We just all assumed.
Yeah.
I have a question. I did listen to everything very recently. Within the last week, I binged it all. I don't know where he betrayed everyone. I don't know what was betrayal.
See, that's another aspect about this.
Yeah, nobody in the cast, as well as my boyfriend who listens to all the raw recordings because he's insane. Like everyone's like, what betrayal? Because we didn't think of it that way because it was just like what was always going to happen. So it's in the final episode when Voltaire calls, like they just fought Delga. Voltaire is like, hey, can I get a phone? Eliana chucks him a phone. He calls Zaitlos. Zaitlos is like, all right, I'm coming. And then he's like, all right, cool, let's kill some fairies. And then and that, listening back, like in my head, Eliana definitely perceives that as a betrayal in the moment.
Yeah, I saw that as betrayal for Eliana. I was like, oh man, and he did that to Eliana, but I wasn't like the party because no one else is really emotionally involved.
No one's invested in
and that's it's only really, and that's why I didn't really consider it a betrayal at all until until this question came up.
Mm-hmm.
And then Caitlin and I had a brief discussion. We didn't want to say too much.
No.
But because we wanted to save most of the talk for here. But we had a brief discussion, and she's the one who pointed out to me that it kind of was betrayal. And I was like, I didn't even think about that.
Well, it's interesting because I didn't listen to all the episodes until very recently, like I just stated. And I did read this question on the Discord, though, and I was like, what? And so I was waiting for it, and it never happened, for me at least. And I was like, okay.
Going back, like, it definitely reads as, like, having heard betrayals in other podcasts, like, it reads the same way. Like, you have the whole, like, what's happening? I'm sorry, this is happening. You can't do that. I'm sorry, I had to. Blah. Like, it reads as a betrayal. And it is a betrayal. Like, he could have...
I mean, it is.
But it's a very personal level betrayal. It is Voltaire kind of betraying Eliana specifically. Yeah. Because Joan has no personal attachment to all the Fae there. Caden doesn't. Nope. Rian doesn't. Eliana, as someone who has kind of had all of these Seelie Fae as a large part of her life and her social circle and stuff, it's a betrayal for her specifically, and that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and in the moment, Voltaire, he's just like, all right, I found the people. Let's get business done.
Yeah, and that's the thing, because this was always what was assumed would happen.
Right.
Because it's Voltaire's job.
Yeah.
Voltaire at no point in this entire season has Voltaire done anything that was against his job.
No.
The entire time he's been following orders.
And he always acts immediately. We have at least half a day of the 24 hours left, but he's like, here's the target, there's my boss. We have all the information we need. I'm gonna call it in. And this reveals an interesting thing that I noticed while I was editing this season. In the process of editing this season, which is that Voltaire doesn't lump Eliana in with any group of people. Like, he's pretty dang sure that she's got Fae stuff going on, and he only becomes more sure of that over the course of the season, but he still rags on the Fae all the time. like everybody rags on the Fae, but they don't think that Eliana is, like, they don't think of Eliana as being part of that group, and I find that very interesting.
I mean, in Voltaire's brain, he has, like you said, he has Eliana separate from everybody. He's 98% sure. I mean, you can only explain away bubblegum pink hair so much.
And in an earlier, we did have a thing initially we were going to do where he had given her, like, an iron resistance to iron necklace or something as part of this little back and forth they do, like, are you supernatural? Maybe, I don't know. Are you supernatural? What kind of supernatural? Like, but which never ended up happening. So, like, he's pretty sure.
Yeah, he's pretty sure.
Mm-hmm. Would have been more entertaining if he just gave her an iron necklace.
That would have been. That would have been an experiment. That would have been a test. Like,
that would have been funny.
Gonna put this on or not?
That would have been less of a, like, fun game and more of a I don't trust you.
Entertaining nonetheless.
Oh yes, very entertaining. Yeah.
So the next question is for Jonathan. It says, when playing as Joan, how are you able to keep player knowledge separate from the GM? Can you give any tips to other GMs out there who want to have a PC in the party?
Okay, so this was an interesting question to think about. So this, I think, largely comes from the fact that I was only introduced to RPGs in general about, like, 4-ish years ago. And I had been attempting to write books, and I had been writing plenty of short stories and stuff years and years before that. And so my initial exposure to creating stories and writing fiction was as someone who knew the entire story but had characters who did not. And so me playing Joan while also being the game master is kind of like being an author while also writing like one of the characters in the book. The difference here being that other people are writing several of the other major characters in the book, which is a very different type of experience. But like, I think that background is what makes it so easy for me to have a character in the campaign, but also be the game master. And also what makes it so easy for me to to not have a lot of favoritism towards Joan. Because like there's a lot of stigma about DM PCs or GM PCs where they like become basically the main character. But for me, Joan is just one of the characters. And so it's that having that as the mindset makes it a lot easier for me to keep what I know as the game master and what I want to happen as the game master separate from what Joan knows and what Joan wants to happen as a character. Because I can put Joan through the ringer sometimes, just like everyone else.
Yes,
you might have seen at the very end of this season.
Hey, do you have any tips for GMs out there outside of become a writer?
Yeah. So, when it comes to tips, I would think first, why is this character here? Because if they're there to be the main character, then don't do it. Just don't try. Because that's how we end up with the stigma against GM PCs, is because once your PC becomes the main character, then it sucks for everyone else playing. But having that mindset of they are one of the characters helps in just the framework, because I think the general framework of how you think about the campaign, basically you want to have a separate framework for how you think of the campaign versus how you think of the character. And so when thinking about like a GM PC and how to use them well and how to keep them yourself separate from them, one thing that I think works really well there is to think about how you can use that PC specifically to help other characters' stories, like the other PC's stories. Because one thing that just we do in general with all of our campaigns is when we're designing our characters, we actually specifically tie their backstory to someone else's backstory in the party. Like, as you saw this time, from episode 1, we had Eliana and Voltaire had their little history. Caden and Joan had a less friendly history.
It's a way to describe it, yes.
Rian and Cayden knew each other from work, basically. And there are different levels you can do this, but like when we set this up from the very beginning, when you tie your GM PC to the other PCs in the party and have the other characters, the other PCs, like paths and story in mind, then it helps distance the character from the game master in the sense of they stop being you and start being one of your characters. Because like game masters never have a problem, or not never, I don't want to say, but you rarely hear of game masters having a problem of keeping like game master knowledge separate from like this NPC's knowledge. For example, like how do you keep the innkeeper from having too much knowledge in this as the GM, or like how do you keep this other just like reoccurring NPCs from having too much knowledge? Because there is that separation between GM and NPCs that for some reason people have a harder time with when the GM has their own PC. But if you just think of the PC more in that same realm, it's a lot easier to keep them separate from yourself.
All right. Thank you.
I hope that made sense.
That made sense to me.
It did. It worked. Yeah.
Oh, that was good.
Question for Zander. Has Voltaire ever worn something unfashionable, intentionally or otherwise?
Yes, I remember this one. I did give an example of one of the times that he would have worn it. But really, the fancy, the ritzy Voltaire is him at his best, and him when he's working, if he can be his ritzy, glamorous self, he's going to do that. But if he gets told, like, hey, you need to go third world country, assassinate some person, he's going to do what it takes to blend in. He is first and foremost, he's hired first and foremost to do what he's told to with a high degree of efficiency.
And let's also remember that Voltaire is old. He's lived in time periods where he probably didn't have as much opportunity.
Yes, that is also something to remember. Voltaire hasn't always been just filthy rich.
True. Yeah.
Why did you decide to make the campaign centered around the city of Vegas? I think it's a Jonathan question.
Yep.
This is fun because I live here.
Short answer, short and simple.
As we are recording this, I am currently in my home in Las Vegas. I am a Vegas local. I've lived here since I was about 8 years old. And I love this city. I recognize a lot of its problems, but I love it. And as someone who lives here and experienced Vegas in all of its weirdness and unique flavor, I always wondered, why is there no urban fantasy set in Vegas? Like, you've got a lot of stuff set in like New York or LA, or in like fictional small town, like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, fictional small town, Gravity Falls, fictional small town, Vampire Diaries, fictional small town, Dresden Files is Chicago, Mortal Instruments is New York, Angel is LA. You've got all these things, but never once is it in Las Vegas. And I never understood why, because Las Vegas, if there's anywhere that's going to have demons and vampires and all of this, it's gonna be Vegas. I also just, in general, don't know any other cities enough to build an entire campaign set in a real world city that isn't Vegas. So there's also that practical element as well.
Yeah, actually, it was kind of fun. A few of us all together, with Jonathan's help, of course, did create a little kind of start in some cities that are important to us or that we know very well, kind of to build what does the unseen world look like in those areas of the world. Also, quick plug on the Patreon, if you too want to see what your favorite world would look like in the unseen world, if
your favorite city.
You hit your favorite city, yes. You hit a certain Patreon tier, you can make that happen. Okay.
That is true.
I think Vegas is also a really good spot. Like, if you were going to show, because this is the campaign, and if you're going to, like, show off, like, all the various, like, every part of the unseen world, Vegas is the place to do it, because you have all of these, like, even just, like, in just the structures of buildings, like everybody, like, all the themed casinos and stuff, like, there are tiebacks to every every culture, every mythological culture. Like, there's just such a diverse collection of mythological tie-ins in this one place.
Yeah, that was one of the fun things for me, world building, like, the unseen world in Las Vegas. Is so we've got you have like the ways where the general concept is if you go to a place like a magical realm in the mortal realm, you can hop into that magical realm and then you can like hop out somewhere else that also has the same, that is also similar. So like, we've got Caesar's Palace. through Caesar's palace, you can go to some Roman god's realm and then hop out in actual Rome. And the Venetian, I wonder where you could go from there. And so on and so forth. And that was really fun with also like which supernatural factions would therefore have an interest in Las Vegas. You've got Fortuna from Olympus Industries over here and all sorts of fun stuff. You've met all of the big shots by this point in the city.
It's just such a good. It provides such a good cross section of just a large swath of the Unseen World building that you've done.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. That was a good explanation. Okay. The next few questions are from Secretly and Secret on Tumblr. The first one is, many of the players and the DM use some sort of accent or voice while playing. Not all the players use an accent as pronounced as Voltaire. So what tips do you have for using accents / speaking patterns that are similar to your own?
So for accents, so one thing you can do with accents is just listen to it on repeat, and then go back and forth where you try to say it, listen to it, try to say it again, and keep doing that until you figure out how to get that accent down.
I was, in looking at this question, because I got to see a lot of the questions beforehand, like I was thinking about how to answer this question, and I think the easiest way to do it is just to give a very brief rundown, each person give a very brief deconstruction of how they do their character's voice and like what they do when they do their character voice and like why they decided to do, like have those elements or whatever. Like how do you do your character voice?
Okay, if it's how do you do your character voice?
Yes. Because like it's difficult to talk about like voices that are similar to your own.
Yeah, in
a broad sense.
All right, so doing our character voice, let's do that in the initiative order.
Initiative order.
Yay.
If you want a minute, I can go first because I've had time to think about this.
I can. Well, with regards to Caden, his voice, because I chose a Texan, which as far as I'm aware, it's not even fully Texan. I did try to do some more research, but it is definitely Southern. And I actually lived in the South, so I had a lot of experience with Southern accents of different varieties. So I felt comfortable, like kind of attaching to that accent or just the kind of drawl that comes with the Southern charm and everything. But Caden's voice is quite distinct from a lot of my other character voices, to be really honest, with all the other characters I've played. So Caden's a lot easier in terms of a voice to capture because of the fact he has a much more distinct accent. But the way I approach Caden as a character in his voice is that he's a very calculating and methodical character. He puts a lot of thought into pretty much everything, even with something that sounds like he said it quickly or came up with an answer quickly. Like he has a predetermined pattern of how he would approach something like that or a situation. And he loves giving information, but in some of the most vaguest ways possible. And so he's like honest and blunt, but not all of it is completely there. Like it veiled in a lot of half truth. So it's almost Fae, but slightly more blunt than Fae would approach. And so I guess the way when you think about trying to build a character voice, think about how the character like approaches conversations. Like, do they put a lot of thought into it, or are they just kind of more free-spirited, or they're just naturally more social? And then that can kind of lead into how the character speaks as well as just how they might sound. I will fully admit, though, that I didn't know what Caden's voice sounded like until the day before we sat down to do session 1. And it was only because of the scene Nathaniel and I did together between Caden and Rian. And that was the only reason I was able to get Caden's voice down before session 1. Was because I figured it out. I finally figured out what he sounds like, how he works. And so mainly, I guess, just approach it from a character perspective as well. So like accent, he's Texan. So of course it would have a type of Southern drawl attached to it. So that's where the accent comes from. So listening about where the accent comes from is good research. And then as for doing voices that vary or just like slightly different from your own natural voice, it comes with just like, why, like, how does the character interact with things? How do they approach things?
What is the way that they talk?
Yeah.
Can I?
Because they won't all say the same thing. Yeah.
Sorry.
You're good.
Yeah.
Can I share something? I mean, no one's ever heard me do a character voice.
Yeah, go for it.
That's listening. Well, maybe they have, depending on.
I mean,
at
if
what
you
point
know
they're
us,
listening to this.
you've played D&D with us. That's true. That's
well,
also
they listen
true.
to other things that we put out, and then for some reason come all the way back to the question.
Which they might do. I
Which
don't
is,
know.
yeah, you could do.
Yeah, go for it.
It could be spoilers. Does it matter? Does anyone care?
Spoilers for yeah.
For character. Okay, well,
Yes.
I'll just give a hint for, you can cut that out, and I'll just say something I did to help get one of my character voices, is that I speak a different language as well. And when I speak that language, my voice is a little bit different due to the necessities of that language, and also just, I don't know why, but my voice gets higher when I speak it. And so I just used the way that my voice changes when I'm speaking that language and just put it into speaking English.
Yeah.
And that's something that helped me.
For me, with Eliana's voice, Eliana's character voice is the closest voice to my own that I've ever done. Usually I do like a freaking cartoon character's voice or like an accent. And so with Eliana's voice is a lot more specific than anything I usually do. What I do with Eliana's voice is I let it like drop down into like the bottom of my register, and then so I don't destroy my vocal cords, I give it a lot of air, which sort of like whoosh. I don't know, I want to make it sound creamy. I can't actually achieve that because my voice is not built that way, but I wanted to make it sound sort of sultry, and I think I got in the general ballpark, I hope. But with Eliana, most of her voice, I think, comes from the way that she talks. Again, I think about just her character. She's a social character. She likes to sort of own a social situation, but she's not usually like pushing herself out there like, hey, look at me. So she speaks more quietly generally and allows people to tune into her, unless she's freaking out. And she usually like speaks and like I take a breath at the beginning of a bunch of ideas, and then I let that go for the whole thing, even if she pauses in the middle because she wants to sound like she knows what she's talking about. And so like I let that like carry it all the way through. And because she is so aware of her own voice and like dialed into she's like Faye. She thinks about the impression that she's giving. And so like I keep her voice within a very like set tonal range. Like it's kind of generally like it's in like a very strict tonal range unless she's freaking out about something, and then it sort of gets kind of that's when it breaks out of that zone, when she's sort of like losing control a little bit, or she'll like take you up there if she wants to put specific emphasis on a specific word. And that's so yeah, a lot of it isn't just in the way that she talks more than the actual voice. It's very different than the way that I talk normally, even though it is technically very similar to my voice.
So with Joan, so first thing I do is I do the thing that I do with most of my female characters is I just kind of take her up to my higher, more effeminate register, where like you just kind of have to change it, like, and I guess it also becomes more breathy. That's not really a conscious choice. It's just kind of what happens when I change to that register.
Oh, just a quick interjection. And something that I've noticed, because Aaron has played a lot of female characters and Jonathan plays, female NPCs and stuff, as well as Joan. But something that I read on the internet that I don't know if it's true is that men tend to speak with like a lot of like resonance open, like at the back of their throat, and women don't. Like, and it's more about that than the pitch. And I don't know if that's true, but I've noticed you doing that with Joan. And I was like, oh, that's cool. I don't know.
Okay, wait, I do What?
Your voice, like the resonance, like just as I've noticed while I'm editing, like the resonance like cuts out more when you're doing Joan's voice. Like it's not as resonant. And even when you don't really go up very much higher, like I can tell that it's Joan because it doesn't have the same resonance as when you usually speak. Yeah. So I don't know.
Is that the same for me?
I don't know if that's legit.
So yeah, one of the issues with describing Joan's voice is a lot of my changes that I do just like to go from male to female are mostly subconscious because I'm basically just copying my 7 billion sisters. I have 5 sisters, which can feel like 7 billion at times. But yeah, so I say higher register, but it would be more accurate to say my effeminate register, which I also said earlier. My stock, this is a female character, set piece, which it's cool that apparently I get rid of that resonance, which I didn't realize I was doing. But for Joan specifically, on top of like, this is a female character, I also specifically like take that voice and then like dunk it in a vat of sass.
I mean, yes.
I love that description
of dump it in a vat of sass.
Because that's just very much who Joan is. Like she is just a very sassy character. And so that comes through in just how she talks to everyone. Even when she's not actively being sassy, there is still an element of that bit to her voice, just as who she is as a person.
So is an edge.
Yeah, she's got this edge to her, which is one thing actually that I really like about the artwork that we have for the podcast. That Emily
Jones.
Does. Yeah, Emily Jones, absolutely amazing artist.
So good.
She's
okay. Another like boost for the Discord. She's been posting fan art in there, and it's very good. It's very good.
It's absolutely
Excellent.
Beautiful.
So good.
We love it so much.
And one of my things that I really like that she's done when she draws Joan is Joan is very angled. She's a very sharply drawn character as opposed to like some of the other characters that are more rounded. And that just with how I talk as Joan and how the vibe of Joan, all of like the angles and lines feel very right for Joan.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I wish I could help. Like I could be more specific in how I get to that like effeminate register that I do. But unfortunately, a lot of that is just through osmosis of living with 6 women in my house.
Just like pick a character and do an impression of that character or that person.
It's always
that
a good way to start.
That's a
good.
Yeah.
I forgot.
Jonathan's biggest advice from these two: become a writer, have a lot of sisters.
I heard it here first.
I know I keep talking like a lot, but I remembered the most important thing about Eliana's voice. One of the first things I actually wrote down about her character when I was drawing like concept art on my notebook page in class instead of paying attention. At the very top of the page, I wrote, and I discovered this like a couple months ago as I was going through like my old photos, I wrote voice, tired. And that's like the first thing I wrote down about Eliana as a character ever. And that's the other primary component of her voice. You have the register, you got the air, you got the tonal zone, and then tired.
Yep.
Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
I think Xander's next.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Voltaire, his voice. First off, disclaimer and apology to any person who's just so happens to be from France, speak France, or speak French, or speak English with a French accent.
Speak France, yeah.
Yeah,
I speak
I
France.
Apologize. I apologize.
I do
doing my
for all
best.
Texans, but yeah.
I'm doing my best. I know it's bad. The main thing that I drew upon for the basis of Voltaire's voice was the time that I spent in the production of the Scarlet Pimpernel.
Hey.
Because we learned how to do French accents there. And my main goal was to find something like the happy medium between an actual French person speaking English and Lumiere from Beauty and the Beast.
Okay.
You know, I wanted to find like the happy medium, you know, fantasy French.
Fantasy French.
Fantasy French. I love it.
Nice.
That's a great descriptor.
And I mean, the accents, there are multiple people who can explain a French accent a lot better than me. So I'll leave it up to the professionals on that point.
Funnily enough, I in high school was in Oklahoma, and the script is written out in the accent that it's supposed to be said in. So if you read it out purely as the script says it, you're supposedly saying an Oklahoma accent or just a Southern accent. And I don't want to say that influenced Cayden's voice, but like it's somewhat in there. But like Oklahoma's accent most of it is very heavy. Like people sit in that show and sometimes just leave just like, I have no idea what those people were talking about, because it's just something so heavy. And I freely admit that. So I guess same thing. I try to find a good medium for Cayden. Sorry to come back to that, but just like, I want it to still have the kind of Southern drawl and Southern charm and character, and almost somewhat then the way he speaks feels almost melodic in a way, but that's kind of like part of the Southern charm. But I want it to be very clear. You know, I want his words to be very purposeful and just like very clear. And so the accent itself never gets very heavy in the Southern. I try my best to keep it like clear, but also still just in the accent itself. You know?
Nathaniel.
Do you really want me to talk about accents?
I want you to talk about how you do Rian's voice.
Not accents.
It's not accents, it's just character voices.
Rian's voice.
It can be tonal changes, it can be accents.
For anyone who has listened to the podcast, though, you all know exactly what I struggle with.
Yeah. Nathaniel's got the fun bit where he accidentally copies every accent that he's hearing, and so he'll have to struggle to not just cycle through half a dozen accents.
Yeah, time to spin the random wheel of accents.
And it's especially bad when someone else in the party is playing a character with a heavy accent, because then Nathaniel will just end up accidentally leaning towards that accent.
Any scene with
awkward
Caden.
Smile from me.
So any scene with Caden is like pretty good, pretty solid.
Yeah.
But like
when it's mixed with Cayden and Voltaire and a couple other things in there, when it's a good mix, it's just like I don't know what to let.
Rian's voice is a journey.
It's great. I love it. It's part of his character, in my opinion.
Rian's voice is originally supposed to be Southern, but like we've all said, he'll adapt to everything that Jonathan, Zander, and Aaron will throw my way. If you can hear some of the accents right now, that's my problem.
I'm really glad that we didn't end up going with the thing where like Eliana's like heritage is Irish, right? And like so when she calls her dad, Jonathan was like, what's this guy's voice supposed to sound like? And I was like, I don't know, I thought like sort of vaguely Irish would be cool. And then because I thought that would be fun to work into like the character, like when Eliana's stressed, like she gets a little bit more Irish. Which does happen inexplicably now for no reason, but I'm really glad I didn't lean into that, because that would just cause further grief for Nathaniel.
I'm also glad that didn't really become a thing, because vaguely Irish is hard.
I know. You said
Didn't you say like I don't think I can.
You said I can't do vaguely. I can do very.
Irish. I can do very or none at all.
I did get. Well, actually, that's spoilers. I got better with Irish in the later thing.
Now, whenever you play Billy, I'm just like,
You're like my nemesis.
Jonathan, I must remain quiet because of you now.
Irish is the one you lean towards the most often on
true.
accident.
It is
like sometimes
true.
when no one else is even having an Irish accent.
Like I said, never bring up the concept in context and subject of accents with me.
All right, then we'll just move on. Okay, question number 2. You often joke about the mom calling in the middle of the session. Did this start as a coincidence and become an inside joke, or was it always on purpose?
It was it's never
on
ever been on
purpose.
purpose.
It's never been on
not
purpose.
once.
Except, well, my mom once did it on purpose, where she knew we were going to do the session, and so she called. But yeah, it's never been something where like we've planned for my mom to call. It's just it started because we were at college and my mom would call on the weekends to just check up and be like, oh, like, how are things going? And da 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 da. And then it just ended up happening perfectly every single week.
Even when we play at different times, on different days.
Or even on different days.
Yeah, that's the thing. It would just somehow, as if she had some weird super sense, like that she would like it's like the inverse of my ears are burning because someone's talking about me. It's just like, oh, they're like, she would get the urge to call whenever we were playing a session,
which has been a years-long phenomenon.
Yeah. I've been playing.
Though it's happened a little less over in the last like year or so.
It's true.
I'd agree with that. But like, especially in the first 2, because we've been kind of in this group, and I've been playing with you guys since April of 3. So it's been 3. Oh my gosh, it's been 3 years.
Yeah.
I've been doing this with you guys for about 3 years, and like from the start of like my first campaign with you guys, that's where it really started. It's been more than 3 for you guys, but I started a little bit later.
That's true.
No, it's been more than 3 years because I was gone for 1.5 years, and we played for like a year before that, and then it's been.
But Amy, you're right. We did Star Wars with Jonathan before Aaron and Xander came in. Yeah. So it's been longer
3 years
for us.
For me. But like since my first one, because that's when it like really started happening a lot. I don't know if it happened before, but definitely it started happening there, and that's what we called it. Like we called it once per session, and that's kind of been the running joke / just like we just get really excited because every time Jonathan's mom does call, like she's always really excited, and then we'll be like, "Hey, we're playing the RPG," and she says hi, or
she's always got something funny to say as well.
Yeah, it's great. Some kind of comment about it, and we love it. And so, and then occasionally, if it's not her mom, it is someone else's mom, and that's why
her mom. Any.
Oh, sorry. Your
grandmother, and
look,
any or like any family member, just like making contact. It's like what's position?
Yeah, what's position?
Yep.
Yeah, I think that answers that question.
Yeah, it does. So the last one is it's kind of a question. It's kind of like a suggestion. So I'll just read it and do with it what you will. I think the Genesys system is very cool, but I'm still a bit confused on the rules, even after listening to all the episodes. LOL. Would you be open to making a short episode just to cover the rules of the system and go over the basics? I think it would help me out a lot, and it'd be a great starting place for other people that are unfamiliar with the system.
Yes, we talked about this, and we are going to put something like that together. Just a little short, and it shouldn't be that difficult to do since we've already done like the mechanics moments and sort of broken it down. So we're gonna either pull the mechanics moments and string them together, or just write a new thing. What did we decide to do?
We decided we want to do an actual like one kind of episode that goes over the absolute basics as like simple as we can possibly get, and then if we have the time and energy later to then take all the mechanics moments and like make a playlist on either the YouTube or somewhere easily accessible. And if you want to like get more specific on specific topics, then you can do that. There are also a lot of other RPG podcasts that specifically only talk about systems and how they work.
And there are like Genesys specific podcasts.
Yeah, we're part of the like if you know the D20 like the D20 we're part of the D20 radio network, and they have a website and they have a lot of good podcasts, some of which talk about like lots of different RPGs and some of which talk about like specific ones, like actual play and also just discussion. So those are I would recommend those as well.
I actually listened to Steve Talks RPGs from the same
Steve
network.
and me talks RPGs.
Oh, Steve and me talk RPGs, and they had a guest come on to explain Genesys to them, GM Chris, and it was a relatively short episode because it's essentially their session 0 to when they first play their first Genesys game. And he explains Genesys really simply to them, and he does it really well. So if you want some of the rudimentary basics, it's definitely there.
I'll see if I can dig up a link for that to put in the description, but we'll do one as well.
We'll do one as well, and we'll try to cover it as simply as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Though I guess if you have like specific things that you're concerned about, that way we can customize it better. Like,
oh yeah, if you have specific questions, hit us up.
If you have specific questions that you want us to address, that will help us establish like what we can focus on. Like, is it about the check systems themselves? Is it character creation? Is it about equipment? Is it about combat? Is it about social encounters? Like, what specifically like do you want us to elaborate more on? And we'll be happy to try to incorporate that more into our focused mechanics episode.
Yeah, that might take a minute to come out, but it will happen eventually.
It will happen. Yes.
Yes, there will be something. In the meantime, there are lots of other things.
We'll get them eventually.
Okay, so that's the end of the questions that were sent in.
Thank you so much for sending questions.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
If you have more, it's too late. So don't bother.
It's not too late. You can always send questions, and we'll either collect them for another Q&A, or on the Discord we just have like a questions channel, and if you just need to know something, like you can just be like, hey, what's up?
Yep.
I don't know, we're lonely.
Yeah,
we want friends.
We'll tell you what's up.
Ask us questions.
This is definitely not our last Q&A.
No.
Definitely not. No.
The show will go on.
Yes.
Even if none of you want it. Anyway, I have...
Alrighty. I mean, it's true.
Where's my wood block? I need to knock on wood.
I have some questions. Some of them have kind of already been answered, so I might not skip them, just for the sake of time. Or I will. I mean, I might skip them. I might not skip them.
I want to ask them. I want to hear it again.
Anyway, I want to know
even if you don't want them.
Even if you don't want them, you might not. First question. So, in the podcast, is there anything you would go back and change, either like with your actions, something that one of your characters did, or even just with like character creation, something that you would change?
This
I'd
one's
show up to the first session with an actual character sheet that was right.
Sorry, I missed the question. What was the question?
Is there anything that you would go back and change, either with with like an action that your character did, like, oh, I wish they hadn't done that and they'd done this instead, or like with the character creation?
I've removed a lot of my own. I've only had a few that, like, because the thing is that, like, this medium of storytelling, the sort of premise and challenge of it is you do what you do, and then when what happens, happens, and then you have to make that meaningful, and you have to make that into something. And if it really doesn't fit, then like we can change it. But like generally, what happens, and you got to deal with it. And if it like contradicts, like if it, you have to make it work with what you've got so far. And there are moments, like several times throughout season 1, Eliana thanks Faye directly. After season 1, I learned that you're not supposed to do that. Like that's a bad thing to do, is to thank Faye the fairy directly. So I removed certain moments because that's something Eliana would know. But that's really the only thing that I can think of specifically that I would change.
Due to the magic of editing, Caitlin has no regrets.
I have exactly. I haven't removed anything really big or important, I promise.
Okay. Sorry, I went to, so I know I already asked you to repeat it again, but my brain all refused I heard what Caitlin said, but my
Jonathan has no regrets. Moving on.
If you would change anything.
The question is, if you could change anything, like an action that Joan, I guess it would be Joan, did, or like
character creation,
something in your character creation, would you? If
no,
like, is there anything?
Hey, this guy, nice.
No regrets. He knows all and has done everything to perfection.
I didn't say that. I just don't regret. I do not regret the mistakes that were made.
I'm just being divisive.
The mistakes that were made ended up to creating the beautiful whole that is Joan.
Yes. That's what I love about this medium. Is you make the mistakes into not mistakes.
Maybe actually a magic character. As everyone knows,
magic can be learned. Magic can be learned.
He can learn virtual magic.
That is there are technically two major ways he could get magic. He could either study and learn virtual magic, or he could make a deal and get bound magic.
That's true.
Second option.
It's fun. Okay.
I get so. I mentioned earlier that making Caden was really difficult as a character. I freely admit that. Like, he's the only character where it didn't take me like a week or 2 weeks to just like do a little bit of research and then just be inspired and just come out with something that works really well, or just is really interesting to play, really fun to play. Caden literally took 4 months. We knew about the Unseen World like a decent amount of time beforehand and got the source book and a lot of time to like think about it and work on it. And I'm not saying that, not everyone here like didn't go through a similar process in terms of making their characters, but Caden just took a really long time, and like he went through a lot of phases in terms of what I wanted or what I thought would be good for the character. And so after such a long process, when it finally hit me what I wanted to do, what really inspired his character and where I wanted to go with it, once that finally locked in, even looking back on his decisions, like, or things that happened in the campaign or even character creation, like, no, I don't regret it at all. I think it just took a long time to do it, and I'm still mad at myself that it took so long. But I'm incredibly happy with the result and the choices that he makes, and so I don't have any regrets for Caden at all, because I absolutely love playing him now. He's fantastic.
Before Zander goes, I know exactly what I would change. I would be far more aggressive about audio quality and recording spaces. I hear TV, move. I hear my own voice, turn that down. We're in the study room at the dorms? No, we're not. We're gonna move. We're gonna record in the hallway.
That would be worse, I think.
Then again, like with those spaces and stuff, like I like worry that like altering that would have changed anything about what we've done. So there's that consideration as well. Anyway, I'm done.
I mean, I know this isn't, hashtag relatable content, but I don't regret much of anything. I have no regrets. Voltaire is his wonderfully heinous person, and I love him to bits.
He is what he is.
No one regrets anything.
Nathaniel?
Nope.
He said magic.
I've stated what
Other than that, I have no regrets.
No regrets.
Yeah, no regrets. No regrets.
Okay.
Because everyone here knows how magic deprived I am.
You are the one who decides what characters you play.
I know.
Problem.
Besides, I don't think Rian needs as much magic with how effective he is in combat. Like,
oh my lord! Imagine
like
Nathaniel magic. Like, I'm scared for when you choose a character that does magic.
Oh, well, man. He does. He's getting that in an upcoming campaign.
Yes,
he is.
Finally.
Aha!
Mm-hmm. The one that we're not doing.
Exactly.
Get ready to be blown away.
If you had to live the life of a character or NPC from the campaign for a day, who would you choose and why? So it could be like someone else's character, it can be your own character, or it can be like an NPC.
Wow.
Boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. There are such pros and cons to this.
I would
every
want
character.
to live. Okay, so if this comes with like their knowledge and stuff. Like, I'm capable of living this day without like dying in the process.
He wants magic. You want to do magic.
I would want, well, so on one side, I would love to like live a life in the day of Joan and do magic, everything, but I would also really love to live a life in the day of the director.
Ooh, I was about to say, as you were saying it, I was like, he wants the most knowledge possible.
The director is the leader of the Las Vegas branch of the secret society that revolves entirely around knowledge, and specifically magical knowledge. I don't want those secrets.
Oh man.
This is tricky.
Like, even if I don't get like the entirety of like the director's knowledge, if I just get to have her like security access.
That's true. He wants security clearance.
You can open a lot of doors.
I want to dive into the libraries of the circle.
Oh, I know what it is now.
I mean, this is an easy answer for me.
Yeah?
You
I'd be Voltaire.
Then. There it is.
There you go. I mean,
I live a day in the life of Voltaire.
And like Aimee said, hopefully it's not on a day when he has to do a job. But I understand that choice. That's my one reservation.
Entertaining way to die. That would be an entertaining way to die.
That's my one reservation with like a lot of these characters, and also with Voltaire specifically, because like I might also choose Voltaire, except also like it's I'm
what day are we
concerned.
talking about?
Yes.
Who knows?
Okay, honestly, if I got to choose the way I die, fighting a monster using magic would be pretty high on the list. If I knew if I knew that this 24 hours would end my death, I would choose Joan, because dying while shooting lightning bolts and such, that's a cool way to go out.
In this fictional scenario, should you die at any point during the day, you just go back to your normal life.
That would make sense.
There you go.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah, there it is.
Aaron, you said you had one.
I mean, after Zander's response, like, if nothing else, I mean, this is slightly different from what I was thinking about earlier, but like, if nothing else, it would be really interesting and really cool to be in a day in the life for Caden, because I'd gain perspective.
I know.
I'd have to live so differently, like, being able to understand to the full extent what having those enhanced senses mean, and then like how he goes about the world, and then him being able to, and then being able to just a massive wolf. It just sounds like so much fun, and it's so interesting. But if it wasn't Caden, it would be Moroni Johnson.
Hey,
I want
that's
to
a good
live.
choice.
I want to live more like Moroni Johnson.
I have such a hard time with this question because I keep thinking about it in terms of utility.
There are a lot of ones.
Because I'm like, I want to, like, director gets to know all the secrets about the world. Eliana get to have, like, actually have her perspective to reference when I'm playing her. But, like, if we're here for a good time, or, like, Elaine, I would love to get inside Elaine's head. But if we're just doing, like, a day in the life, I gotta choose Darcy. Like, if we're here for a good time, I'm going with Darcy.
We're here for a good time.
Actually, I think Elaine would probably be the most, like, wild in just the dramatic shift from like our experience to that experience, because as stated in the campaign, Elaine experiences all of the life of people in her vicinity.
Oh, frick.
All of the joys and all of the pain.
I might be traumatized by that, actually. Never mind. I retract that.
I retract
suggestion.
Who do you want to be, Nathaniel?
That's a tricky one.
It is, isn't it? Wait, I know which one.
Oh, yeah? What do you think?
Well,
you want to be
let
Coyote.
him go first. Oh.
Oh, Coyote would be fun, though, running around messing with people.
That's very true. What would you choose, though, Nathaniel? What would you choose?
It really is a tie between Coyote, Caden, and Moroni. It really is a tie between the three.
Okay, that's cool.
What are your reasons?
Coyote, one, it'd be a lot of fun, and two, also select my little bit of an interest in Native American lore. Caden, just because he's a good character just to look up to, and he kind of inspires you to try and be your best in a way.
That's true.
And Moroni, he's so righteous. I wish to be righteous.
You wish to just, by living a day in his life, to just absorb some of that goodness.
Absolutely.
Man.
Righteous desires.
I-
Good thing.
See, now I'm thinking about how Caden would respond to you saying that. That's my immediate thought. And it's already very interesting what his response is. But I want to give it because...
Okay.
No.
This question is kind of similar, but it's a little different. It is, what creature or figure from lore would you most like your character to meet?
Like to...
Right, character...
As in Joan.
What?
What figure from lore or mythology or whatever would you most like Joan to meet? But also to everyone.
Right.
That was just for...
That's so difficult.
I am legally not allowed to say this. I'm not allowed to answer this.
Legally.
Oh, yeah.
As in you will be arrested?
Really?
I would have
Or
to arrest
Caitlin
myself.
will be mad at you.
Spoilers.
No,
Because
he would arrest himself.
Jonathan pleads the fifth. Anyone else?
I have an amount of control as to who gets to meet which character.
That's
true.
fair. So anything he says is suspect because it's like, is that
It's
gonna
true.
happen?
Okay, Jonathan can't answer, but everyone else can answer.
Jonathan's
Sorry,
not allowed.
Jonathan. You can just tell us who you would most like to meet.
It's also not allowed?
Because, once again, so this is even more so because I, as the GM, decide which mythological
That's
figures
also
we encounter.
true.
Okay,
And so
Jonathan
even
doesn't
more
get to
than
answer
who
any
do I
more
want
questions.
Joan to
Anyone
meet?
else?
Jonathan's illegal.
Because if I really want to meet someone from mythology, it's likely
Yeah.
that I will find some way for
You'll
it to
find a
work.
way. Oh my
Find
gosh.
it. Life. Find
Okay,
a
so
way.
everyone else.
Jonathan finds a way.
Nah, I think I may also have to plead the fifth on my case.
No, you do not.
Why?
No,
Why?
because
You already
I
beat
feel
him?
like he's met everyone I would already really want him to meet, and everyone that I
Aw.
never imagined him meeting to begin with.
Okay, that's not pleading the
I
fifth.
love that.
There's nothing incriminating there.
Except for you being adorable.
Coyote was kind of a dream come true. I'm grateful to have Coyote of this campaign.
I
at all. It
love
was
watching
great. It was
Rian just
excellent.
laugh at Coyote.
Oh, it was excellent.
One of my favorite mini dynamics is the dynamic between Voltaire, Coyote, and Rian. Where Coyote messes with Voltaire, Voltaire gets pissed, and Rian is having the time of his life.
It's
Yeah.
just the equation
Caden
for
coming in here
maximal
just-
Voltaire rage.
and Caden having to quell it.
Which
so
makes
that it
Voltaire
doesn't
very
explode.
entertaining. Volatile Voltaire is one of the most entertaining Voltaires.
I can't deny that.
Nope. Cannot deny.
I love Voltaire threatening to kill Coyote, and Coyote cares not at all for
He's like,
it. He's
okay.
like, okay.
Yeah, let's go.
Yeah, it's like Rian's like, no, killing.
just to give you guys like an inkling of the frustration Voltaire was feeling. It was bleeding over into me, and you know me. I have 4 facial expressions. That's how much I emote. Like, I was getting frustrated from all of the frustration that Voltaire was feeling. It was ridiculous.
I remember receiving a text from Zander one week, while he was editing that, because he does a rough edit, and then I do a final edit for season 1. While he was editing that, and he was like, I am so ticked off. Is this a me problem or a Voltaire problem? Is this happening, or am I just being infected by Voltaire? That's how mad.
Oh man.
Who would everyone like to meet except for Jonathan and Nathaniel, who's already met everyone he would like to meet, or met everyone who would like Rian to meet to this point?
Okay, actually, I do want it, Nathaniel. So, since you already said the Rian thing, who fictional mythological character would you like to encounter?
Mythological character? Me?
Yeah.
Ooh, that's a good question. This is tricky because my knowledge of mythology is like an inkling.
I was gonna
Pick
say
someone that you like.
Yeah, you don't need to pick some obscure, like, you don't need to pick one of the Dua de Donan or anything, like.
Pick what?
Exactly.
Like I said, you don't need to pick one of them.
Okay. Shoot, I guess one mythological character, I guess, would be interesting. We would, Merlin. Go Merlin.
Nice. That's a good choice.
That's good choice. Good choice.
That opened up a whole other world.
And also, remember that it's not just mythological. She said, like, in lore, so that would include just, like, I or at least in my head, I'm including just, like, people that you are aware of existing in the unseen world at all.
That,
See, that opens up a whole new
here's
thing, too.
my answer. And my answer is, I think the most interesting interaction I can think of between Eliana and a mythical person would be Eliana and the Queen of Summer. That would be interesting.
That would be fun. That would be a fun conversation.
Probably, I think it'd be interesting, if nothing else, to have like for them to just have if it was even possible to have a fun conversation between these two people. If Caden could meet Artemis or Orion.
Ooh, fun.
Interestingly enough.
Goddess of the Hunt or the famous hunter in the sky.
Sorry about that. Technological difficulties / family calling.
You're good.
All right.
That's good.
All right, so who would you want Xander to meet?
Voltaire.
Who would I want Xander to meet?
Who would you want Voltaire to meet?
Voltaire.
Everyone, all the people. Who would I want Voltaire to meet? I feel like he'd have fun sitting down with Apollo.
So many Greek figures.
Yes. I love that.
I feel like he'd have fun sitting down with Apollo.
I feel like he'd have fun with Dionysus.
Oh, him and Dionysus.
Oh, Xander, I wanted to tell you, I was at work, and I've been at work a lot of days, but there's these flowers they're begonias, but they're specifically called cocktail begonias, and the names are cocktail gin, cocktail vodka, and cocktail champagne, and every time I'm restocking them, I'm like, Voltaire.
Voltaire.
I love that.
Oh, man.
Nice.
Uh-huh.
Okay, that's
Love
good.
it.
That's great.
Okay, next question. I have a few of them, so I'm just trying to pick the good ones.
Pick the spiciest one you have.
Spicy.
That question of who do you want your characters to meet is a really good one, and it is so good for Joan. But I can't answer.
No answers.
I mean, Jonathan will answer that question within the next, over the course of however many seasons of The Unseen World.
Well, here's a question for you, Jonathan, since you couldn't answer the last one.
Whoa. That was so aggressive.
That was, I did feel a bit aggressive.
Okay.
I apologize.
I love this energy. This is great energy.
All right, what's the question?
So how do you decide the personalities when you're Elaine, or when you're Morgan Le Fay, or when you're Fortuna? How do you decide how they're going to act, like their personalities? Because you're playing like a well-known maybe not well-known for like Elaine or like some people, but like a lot of them could be somewhat well-known or have preconceptions of personality. How do you decide what that's going to be?
I typically take a concept, so with the unseen, so this changes a bit depending on different campaigns, but like for the unseen world specifically, I will take the overall concept of the character that already exists, and then I will say and then I will think, has the modern world affected them? If so, how? With these pre-existing characters. So like for Fortuna, for example, she's ancient, she's Roman, so she's going to have that element to her. And then but she's also the goddess of luck. But then how has the modern world affected her? It's Vegas, baby.
It's Vegas, baby.
She's not just Fortuna, she's Lady Luck.
Yeah.
That's why she hangs around in Vegas, because in a way, the city is a bit of the strip, to be specific, is a temple to luck, if you want to look at it that way. And so that's why, like, when she first shows up in like kind of like what was it, flapper type garb.
She was like a
cocktail singer. That's what it was.
Yeah.
She shows up in like a cocktail singer outfit, and which kind of shows, because that is a bit older Vegas, but that felt like the right vibe for the goddess of luck interacting with the modern world, specifically Vegas. And then so just those considerations became my version of Fortuna. And then you see different aspects of her, like how she acts when she shows up in the Venetian is different from how she acts when she's ready to go to war in the very last episode.
Right.
Which, of course, you would act differently in those situations anyways. But like, you see more of her as a Roman goddess in the end, and her more of as Lady Luck in the Venetian. And then Morgan very much was, I'm doing Morgan Le Fay, and she's not affected by modern world at all, really. She's and then specifically her relationship to Joan had an effect on her characterization, because Joan is one of the PCs that was a major element. And so when I was coming up with Joan, and that having the Mother Gothel type vibe in the relationship, that affected how Morgan's character ended up being like. And so when I basically so I guess that's the third axis, is how are they connected to the PCs? So what exists of this character already? Would the modern world change them? If so, how? What is their connection to the PCs?
Cool. Pretty good explanation.
Yeah.
Okay. So, throughout the campaign, we see some character development. I mean, in varying degrees from people. I hope so too.
My character doesn't develop at all.
No one develops. They are very stagnant characters, clearly. So do you guys, as they're meant to be, no one changes. We just make the numbers. We make the numbers higher on the sheets, and their personalities stay the same. Cause and effect do not exist.
Okay. Anyway, your question.
Anyway, so do you guys plan for the character development in your characters? Like, do you have an idea of where it's going, or do you just kind of let the game take you where it does?
Aaron just laughs.
Because I feel I have a really fun perspective on this. And I'd love to connect it back to motivations, but does anyone else have something they want to say first?
I think mine is more definitely just go with the flow with a touch of planning if absolutely necessary. Let's all go with the flow.
I'm very similar to Nathaniel. I mean, I'll do as much backstory as is necessary, and then I'll hand that backstory to Jonathan, and I'll be like, Jonathan, you mad genius.
Do what you do best.
I think we all do that to some degree, though we approach it differently. With my characters, I try to set up, I don't know, my favorite thing to do with Genesys is build interesting motivational structures, and then just sort of be like, how would this happen in a person, and how would that affect their life, and then what does that lead them to do? I don't know, I just like the build of the character. And
Caitlin also likes giving me things to break.
I love giving Jonathan things. I'm just like, here's my whole heart. Have fun destroying it. Because that's the most fun thing, is to, like, I like challenges. I like character challenges, and I don't know, what's the fun of having a very personal god interested exclusively in creating the most narratively satisfying dramatic thing that could happen for your person, and like, why would you not hand them stuff to do things with? But with, like,
I am all powerful and all knowing, but I am not all good.
No. You are all interesting. I will say that.
Yeah.
You're all interesting.
Oh, interesting.
But in terms of like setting up the character and to have a specific arc, like I'll have a thing that I'll build them on like a tipping point, basically. My characters, I try to have them always be on a tipping point when they start the campaign. And usually and then that will take them sort of up and down from there. And I'll have like ideas of several directions they could go. Like, what's the darkest timeline? What would I like them to learn from this in an ideal world? And then I just hand it to Jonathan. I hand half of it to Jonathan and the rest of it to everybody else. And then just sort of see how that changes things. But I do have, like, I'll set up characters specifically to have, like, a fall, usually. I'm like, let's bring them as high as they can go and see how low we can get them over the course of this. But, which usually Jonathan helps out with a lot. At least in our previous campaigns, I won't speak for this one, but I might have a general direction of, especially knowing, like, what the other players, who some of the other characters are, like, I will have a few directions that I can see them going in, and I'll hone in on those if the story seems to be going that way, because I think we as humans also do that. Like, we look for the narratives in our own lives and hone in on stuff. But yeah, I don't want to talk for too long, but yeah, I set them up like a tipping
really
point.
Interesting because I do the opposite. I like to, I've realized the pattern with almost all my characters is I place them in a moment of complete stagnation in their life when they're not really doing anything out of the ordinary. They have a routine and this is just what they do. And I always give them very good reasons for why that is the way they have to live their life. And then I like to see what messing that up does.
I think most of all my characters are nearly the exact same way built as that, actually, I think. Now that I'm looking back on some of them.
I like finding the tension and creating the maximum, the circumstances for maximum drama to occur around the tension, the specific character tension.
I like giving my characters a problem, and we see, and hopefully they can solve it. Hopefully, and like for Joan, for example, the problem she comes into the campaign with is her relationship with Morgan Le Fay, which is not resolved by the end of season 1. It gets worse by the end of season 1.
That is very true.
But that's basically what I do with all my characters is they have a problem that hopefully they can solve, but they might not.
And then
Aaron,
just sort of see what happens.
Anything to say about characters? I'm pretty sure you don't have any, right? You don't play characters?
No, I don't play characters, period, at all. So, I don't know, I guess the main difference I could see between how I make characters is like Caitlin or you, Aimee, is that, like, I love creating conflict within the motivations. I love motivations that are specifically in conflict with each other. And I don't know, I sometimes find I almost congratulate myself on my own cleverness, which is dumb, but sometimes it's just too juicy. I'm just like, oh, that's brilliant. And then Jonathan works with it wonderfully as well. But what I like to do, I think I've noticed, is I like to set my characters on a path, and whether or not, like, how far they are along that specific path, they have a goal in their mind that they're working towards. And whether or not they're going to reach that goal is still dependent mainly on the story. And that really is still dependent a lot on the desire that they have, what thing that's motivating them most to go on that path or in a specific direction. That doesn't mean the path is going to be straight. It doesn't even mean that they're going to get to where they want to go. But at least that's kind of like, it helps me inform most of their decisions about, like, why they're doing the things they are. Caden has a specific goal in mind. He has something that he wants to achieve. It's just the story itself hasn't, like, at this time really directly molded him off or in crazy directions off that path yet. but that could very much happen based on what all the things that came before it. Why he's even on that path in the first place. What path's going on. Freaking gosh dang it, Jonathan.
The laughing.
But
Is there a path anymore? Does it just fall off into an abyss? Who knows?
You know what? That could happen. And you know what? The path is open to change.
It's joy in the journey.
Love that. So I give them a direction to walk, and then they walk, and then Jonathan directs where that path goes, and whether, like, if that means they're now walking in foliage and not on the path anymore, they're like, oh frick, what how did we get here? You know? And they have to either get back on the path or commit to a different path or make their own path. Like, I want to keep it open, and I do the same by building the backstory and motivations, but I like that there's a direction to them, that even in their minds, even sometimes if they're not aware of it, they're headed in a direction, and whether or not they obtain, like, get there is kind of part of the journey. I love the journey itself, because that's where they really learn more about who they are and how they change as characters, is through the journey, not even necessarily getting to where they want to go.
I like that, because I don't do that. I create an interesting, a psychology I think is interesting, and then I just sort of throw it out there and see what happens.
I feel like I'm just like, this is a character.
Here they are.
They have things they want, and you have things you want, and we'll see what happens with that.
I mean, that's the basics of it.
All right.
It's true. Xander, answer the question.
He did answer the question.
He already did.
Yeah.
Did he already answer the question?
He did. He goes with the flow.
Remind me what the question is.
Goes with the flow. I forgot.
It's the same one. We haven't done another one.
It's the same one. We haven't moved on.
Oh, cool.
All right. I forgot. You did answer the question. You did it. Yay. Okay. What have you gained from this experience? Just kind of in
what
either...
haven't I gained from this?
Everything.
Honestly, my feelings kind of like Caitlin there. Like,
yeah,
gained a lot, but like picking one thing in particular,
it's so difficult.
What one thing has stood out to you, like personally? What comes to mind first? Don't make me hold up a weird painting.
I don't know, just the joy of creating like this world and these stories, like, because I've created worlds before. But in a big sense, the Unseen World is the first time I have created and then fully realized a world. Because, like, my books are, like, all of my books are still, like, in the draft stages, like, third draft, second draft, etc. I haven't published any of my books yet. And so none of those worlds have been fully realized. And then a lot of our campaigns have been set in pre-existing universes, or... there was the one where we just hopped between a bunch of universes. But the Unseen World is a universe of my own creation. And so taking this world, making it, and then putting it out there and like having it be a thing that people can consume. I don't know. I love that. Just a joy of creating a world and then realizing that world.
I have a hard time deciding between two different things. First thing, easiest to say, you guys are some of my closest friends ever. And I love, like, in my mind, growing up in an artistic household, like, in my mind, like, the mark of successful adulthood is creating, like, being an adult, doing creative projects that you are publishing with your friends. Like, that's what I saw my parents do. That's like my vision for like successful adulthood, which is nice. Like, I don't have dreams, but I realized like a couple weeks ago that like, yeah, that's my dream. I'm doing it actually. And also, you know, having a family and whatever, but like, you know, so like the other thing is, that it's just like, this is the most consistently creatively fulfilling, like intellectually fulfilling, creatively fulfilling thing I've ever made and participated in. Like I just like this as like since I was like a kid, like I'm playing with my food and I'm making families out of the carrots, making character dynamics between the carrots on my plate at dinner, and I'm like drawing, like my journals were just full of like little blocks of just like character dynamics unfolding generationally down the page of stick figures. And this allows me to dive deep into the thing that I most enjoy creating, which is characters and exploring character dynamics. And it fuels my curiosity for every other aspect of my life. Like, I'm a humanities major, and it's like, pick some books off of this list, and I'm like, these are relevant to the themes I'm thinking about with the unseen world right now. And so having this fuels my curiosity in all of these other respects. And I feel like I've gained so many skills. I'm much more well-read. I'm interested in things I would have never been interested in. I've learned things I never would have learned before, as well as just participating. This is just such a richly fulfilling experience, and I get to do it every week. And it also fulfills that need to create something to share with someone, and even just sharing it with you guys, but also sharing it with you guys, the listening, is just so satisfying, and I love it.
Ditto.
That's beautiful.
I mean, you more or less captured all the things that I would say, or how I feel about most of it. For me, I've always wanted to do something creative to share. Part of me have always wanted to be a creator, but has always been really hesitant, or felt that I wouldn't be able to be successful as a creator in the world, and that from any medium. As much as I love music and literature and movies and television and singing and acting, and I do and love all those things and know a lot about those, I felt that I wouldn't be very successful in it, and so I never tried to make it into a career. I'm not saying that we're turning this into our career or anything. It's just that I never anticipated that I could even make something creative on my own, to even as a hobby, to then share with others. It'd be more for me, but I always liked sharing. I always wanted to create it to share with people. I always felt that my favorite thing about create was that I wanted other people to see it. I wanted to share it. I wanted other people to either just feel something from it. That's what I loved about performing in band and singing, was that I wanted other people to feel something because of it, that you're sharing and creating a story because it's helping other people to either learn from it or feel inspired by it, or just getting something from it. They're either satisfied, or it's just a fun experience for them. Whether or not all they get from it is just that was fun, that's still something. And to be able to have you guys here has made it possible, because I don't know if I could have done it mainly on my own, but now that I get to work creatively with some people I'm just really close to, some of my best friends, that is not only just satisfying, it's incredibly enriching, and just something I'm just incredibly grateful for, because I don't know what I'd be doing creatively outside of this. Who knows? Maybe I'll just only be singing in the shower for the rest of my life, and that's the only creative thing I could have done for my entire life. But being able to do this definitely allows me to feel my creative outlet while still focusing on other things in life. And I am incredibly grateful to all of you. And the fact that we get to share this with people outside of this group has always been a dream, because I freaking love this story. I love all the stories we've created. They're incredibly insightful, inspiring. I feel they're very relatable, very human, and being able to share that with people in case they get something out of it is truly a blessing. So I get a lot out of this too. That's all I can say.
I love that. I agree 100% with everything you guys have said so far.
Same.
Yeah. Ditto.
There it is. I mean,
nothing to elaborate.
What else?
I mean,
say.
I mean, I feel like you all have said everything that I would have said in a much more articulate, understandable way.
I'm not articulate. I'm incredibly verbose most of the time.
But that's just me.
You can be articulate and verbose. Those don't cancel out.
Yeah, I know. I'm just being ridiculous.
If I knew what those meant.
Articulate means said well. Verbose means said a lot. Basically, putting it really simply.
Okay.
As in, that was articulate but not verbose in the explanation.
Yes. Verbose means you say a lot of words. Articulate means you speak the words well. For the listeners,
I need to start doing visual gags.
Caitlin pointed at herself when I was describing verbose, and when I described articulate, she went like did the
Oh man. Like, this entire Q&A has been yet another argument to turn this into a video medium because of everyone's reactions, but we cannot.
Please no.
We cannot.
Okay.
If we do live shows, they gotta be.
Oh my gosh.
That'll be a new experience for them. That's for sure.
That'll be a thing.
It's a terrifying experience.
See all our constant
It
reactions.
certainly would be an experience.
Yes, it would. I'm excited by the idea. I'm really excited.
So, final question.
Okay.
Is there anything that you would like to say before the release of season 2?
I don't know.
Be ready. Be ready, boys.
Be ready.
Always.
Freaking
Y'all
ready.
know, I don't know if we've said this on the podcast, but we record these things. We don't edit them way in advance, as should be obvious at this point. But we do record them way in advance.
Way in
so
advance.
we've played through all of season 2 at this point.
Yeah, we're
And-
actually
oh my
just starting
laws.
playing season 3.
Yeah, we just started recording season 3. So,
We've done a lot of stuff in between.
and we did quite a
We
bit
did
of
do a lot of stuff in
a
between.
lot of it also Unseen World related that we can't talk about.
But yes, but we've already done all of season 2, and before you listen to season 2, just
Listen to season 1.
I mean, do that.
I
Yes,
sure
please.
hope you have before you
listen to season
Listen to season 1 before you listen to season 2.
Obviously, listen to season 1, but like beyond that, like be ready
Oh my gosh.
because it is a ride.
Oh yeah,
Anyone
when things
like
get
Ominous?
moving, when
You
things
ready?
get moving,
They don't stop.
they get moving in a big way.
Oh my
They
gosh.
don't stop moving. That is freaking. You get on that train and you ride that all the way to the end, and who knows if it's gonna crash.
It's
It really depends on
The
who
days
you are,
start
and what you
coming
wanted.
and they don't stop coming. To quote
I
a
have
very
something-
wise man.
I have something very, very silly to say. Which
Go
is
for it.
that
Acceptable.
in the finale of season 1, so during the final conversation with between Elianna and Voltaire in that episode, there in the original recording there was a TV playing very loudly in the background. So we re-recorded, like we wrote it down what was said and then re-recorded it later. And that, if you are listening to this concurrent with releasing these episodes, is the version that most of you have heard. We released that, went back, realized it was just bad, and decided
so
that
bad.
it was not good. And like you can tell when it starts, when Voltaire suddenly becomes like a lot more French, and like we specifically had someone be like, hey, I was kind of confused about this, like, I think I need to re-listen to the end of the episode, because it sounds like, Caitlin, you start playing a different character. And I was like, yeah, so, because it'd been a minute since we'd done the character voices. So, yeah, we decided that even with the background noise, it's the original recording is just better. So I put that back in, did a sneaky little re-upload, which I do sometimes to fix technical problems. And so if you want to listen to that, it's like roughly at the like hour 20-minute mark, hour 30-minute mark. If you
Highly recommended.
I would recommend re-listening to that. All like 50 of you who listened to the terrible version. That's what I would say before season 2. Listening to season 2 is go back hour and 20 minutes, hour and 30. That's like 80 minutes. Around 80-90 minutes if you're listening on Spotify. I would recommend re-listening to that.
Okay.
Other than that, just oh my gosh, you're not ready. I wasn't.
Are you ready?
No,
Are you ready?
I'm not ready. But you better be ready because season 2 is coming out within the next couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's fast.
So unless anyone has any final comments.
About season 2 or about just anything?
Anything.
What? Yeah.
Among the things that we did between recording of season 2 and 3, which we did a lot, and most of it was Unseen World related, and most of which we cannot talk about because that is some very fun future content for later down the line. But we did do a one-shot where we played ourselves in the Unseen World. That one-shot will be Patreon content. I will more specifically have it on the exact right tier, but you'll be able to get access to that. But I will be compiling and editing that, and anyone who is on that tier will have access to that and other extra one-shots or things that will not be on the official podcast. So there'll be other things there, and we have ideas for that, but for sure, the first thing you're going to get is a one-shot where we get to play ourselves, and we're playing ourselves while we were in college.
That is also a really fun thing there because, well, one, we get to play as like an alternate version of ourselves, which is fun.
Trippy as all get out.
Yeah, it is. But two, it's also fun because you get to see the Unseen World through a smaller lens.
A much smaller lens.
A much smaller lens.
Where instead of people dealing with like ancient fae ladies planning on destroying a city, it's a bunch of college kids dealing with a problem that college kids can deal with.
Specifically, the people playing in this one shot are Jonathan, Aaron, Zander, me, and our editor, Ben, who y'all have not heard yet. But
that'll be your first time hearing him.
Yeah, that's another fun thing. You'll get to meet Ben.
You'll get to meet Ben for the first time. Yep.
So look forward to that.
Look forward to that. We are very excited for that.
We've got some other stuff in the works.
It'll take some time, but it's coming.
We're working on it.
We're getting there.
We get there eventually.
We always get the Patreon some more. We wanted to give more to you guys. We just needed to figure out what it is that we were going to do, and it's coming.
You know, if there are specific things you would be interested in, like if you guys are like interested in, like, I want Q&As more often, or I want this, then like suggest
Let us know.
What would you want to give us money for? We want it.
Yeah, we're trying to find out ways that we can think. We're trying to figure out things that we can put on the Patreon, and so any ideas y'all have would be greatly appreciated.
Jonathan's making bank off of his rule books, and I'm very jealous. Please help me fight him.
Help Caitlin fight God.
Always.
I thought you might fight Jonathan.
Always.
I'm the god of the unseen world.
It's true. This is true.
Oh.
Anyway, anybody got anything else they want to say?
No. I enjoyed it. Thanks for letting me moderate. It was fun.
Thank you for doing it. You had very good questions.
Be excited.
Thank you, everyone who sent in questions.
It's easy to ask good questions when other people give them to you.
Yeah, everybody, thank you so much for sending in questions, specifically Crafty Doran, Secretly and Secret. We're very grateful, and we're very excited to receive them. We're happy when anyone talks to us, honestly.
Yeah,
really.
Yeah.
But to have people thinking critically about the thing we're making is really cool.
It's nice.
And also just like, in general, thank you to everyone listening to this podcast.
Yes.
Thank you for being here with us.
It means so, like, we would be doing this whether people were listening or not, because we're crazy people. But
we are crazy.
Like, that you are listening means the whole frickin' world.
It really does.
It really does. And with that, we will see you at the beginning of The Unseen World Season 2. Bye!
Bye.